Welcome everyone once again to the Spanish Breakfast Show live on U2 Spain, where every week I'm finding the answers to lots of your questions about how to move to Spain, how to fit in, and what it's like to live there by speaking to experts, expats, and exciting and experienced people with a story to tell. You can ask your questions right now in the chat box, or if you're not watching live, in the comments below. Either way, we'll get you some answers. And my lovely wife Liz is looking in and will be on the chat under the name U2 Aromatherapy. So if I miss any questions, she'll pass them on to me. So give her a wave, everybody, and hello, everybody who's signed in. Today, I have for you the very best top tips for people wanting to move to Spain. I've asked lots of experts and expats on Facebook pages and people working and living in Spain what their number one tip is, and I'll be giving shout outs to all of you as we go along. As usual, I have a guest with me from Spain, and today we're going live to Almeria to meet a man who's very well travelled and has written blogs and books about moving to Spain. So please say hello to David Wright. Hello, David. How's it going?
Hi, thanks for having me. Fine, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for giving up your time.
No
So
worries.
we'll just have a little bit of background. How long have you lived in Spain?
18 and a half years now. Quite a while. Time
Yeah,
flies here.
cool. And you're building your own house at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, coming up to the last stages now. I've been building for almost 2 years now, so we're just waiting for the final licenses to finish the house. But there's going to be a lot more work in the next year or so, putting in wardrobes and decorating, but we're almost there now.
Hmm. Brilliant. So you might have some top tips about that. But as we were saying before we just started the broadcast there, we're going to try and stick to the general top tips because there'll be people watching who want to know those. So well, let's get straight into it. Really, I've got quite a long list of top tips. Well, just everybody's tips. There's about 23 down there. So what I think we should do is for you to tell us one of your best pieces of advice based on your experience, and I'll tick them off the list as we go and see if they're in agreement with what people say. And I'll drop people's names in as well because I've told them that I'm going to give them all a shout out. So
Okay.
what's your number one tip?
Well, number one tip I think is probably obvious, but is learn Spanish. And people will probably say, "Oh, that's obvious," and I'm going to learn. But when I first came to Spain 18 years ago, I was the same. I thought, "Yeah, I'm going to learn. I'll pick it up when I get there." And I worked for a company here for a couple of years who had English speakers, so I was lazy. I didn't really bother to learn until I went self-employed, and then that really changed things. And I had to go out and order my materials and buy stuff on the phone. And I realised then what a waste of 2 years has been not learning the language and how difficult it was. So learning the language will make more difference to you than you can even imagine. And people can learn before they even move to Spain because there's so many apps and online services now that are free that you can learn. And I think basically English people, me personally anyway, we're lazy at learning other languages when we go away. We think and expect other people to learn their language, but and most people in Spain now are learning Spanish. But if you go out of the way or go to a supermarket or travel around Spain, you are going to need to learn Spanish at some point. So that's probably the
Hmm.
main thing you want to do, even before you even think about moving to Spain.
Yeah, quite. I remember the first time we came to Spain, me and my wife, and we were actually camping in France, and we went through to northern Spain, and we were expecting them to speak a little bit of English, but actually up north there they speak, Galician and Basque and all those languages first, and they didn't even speak French. I was thinking because they're near the border, they'd do that, but no, I felt completely lost. So before I came to Spain again, I learned, some of the basics, and now it is actually the number one tip that I got from everybody. So you're right, it may sound obvious, but let's just give a shout out to Caroline Johnson, Owen Fox, Brenda Tilson, Graham Shepherd, Julia Dixon Braid, and Kel Lacey. Hello, all of you, if you're watching. And they're saying, yeah, keep on learning as well when you're there. Take lessons, watch Spanish TV, and read newspapers. How did you learn?
Well, actually, I when I went self-employed and I went to a builder's merchant to order some stuff, and he looked at me like I just stepped off another planet and didn't even want to serve me. So I was so upset and set back by this. I suppose it's like anybody that goes into a builder's merchant in any country. If you can't speak the language, it's just like you're from another planet. So I went, booked up lessons, And I sat down with my teacher and said, I want private lessons. I want them 3 times a week, and I need to learn fast. And he sat me down and said, okay, the verb to eat is comer. So we write down comer, comais, comemos, comen, past, present, future. I went, wait a minute, this is no good. And he said, what do you mean? I said, how long is this going to take? And he said, what, to learn Spanish? I said, yeah. He said, well, a couple of years. I went, no, I need to speak next week. And he looked at me and he laughed and he said, what are you talking about? I said, I've got all of my materials next week. And he said, well, no, this is going to take ages. I said, I can't learn all the verbs. I don't want to write it or read it or anything. I just want to speak it. So in the end, he shook his shoulders and said, well, I don't know what to say. And I said, listen, years ago when I was a kid learning French in an English primary school, we did role play. And I had to explain to him what role play was. And I said, can you not be the shop owner? I come in and say, hello, good morning. What do you want? I want this, I want that. How long, how wide? I want a paintbrush, paint and things like that. And that's what we did. And we did role play, no reading, no writing. And basically, after a couple of weeks, I could go and order screws and nails and buy a hammer in the shop. I knew all these words. And because I was using the words, it stuck, and that's basically how I started learning.
Brilliant. Well, okay, so let's move on to the next tip. What's your second biggest tip?
The second tip, what I'll probably say is really along the lines of learning Spanish is mix with Spanish people. And people, a lot of British people, most of them, and I was included in this, first few years they're here, they tend to stick with British communities and British groups and pubs. And that's great. We all want a company, and you do learn a lot from these expats that are living here, like where to get your TV and your internet and the car paperwork and stuff like that. And it's very handy and useful. But after a while, it gets a little bit boring. The conversation is the same, and you don't practice your Spanish. So I made a point of going out and joining a Spanish walking club where there was no English. I joined a climbing club and a walking club, all Spanish. And I went out and I made a fool of myself, basically, and I didn't care about it. I just jumped in at the deep end and started speaking to them. And then after a few weeks in each of these clubs, they helped me and I made some great new friends and I learned Spanish. And the main thing was I was practicing what I was learning. So it became, my vocabulary was building each week. And a few years later, I joined a salsa dancing club. That was another story altogether, but I'm not a dancer of any type. Well, I wasn't then. And that's how I met my Spanish wife, through a salsa dancing club. And most of my friends now are Spanish. So really joining clubs that are not English clubs is the way to practice your Spanish and meet some great Spanish people.
Brilliant. Yes. And I'd like to thank Tims and Pete for putting down exactly the same thing. He likes flamenco and Vespa rallies, so he went to, and they were all Spanish people doing, and he's learnt how to play flamenco guitar because of it, and through a Spanish teacher that was there, and somebody also said establish good relationships with people in the formal environments as well, get to know them. In the sort of solicitors, banks, town hall, insurance companies, even if you find English speakers to start with, if your Spanish isn't brilliant to begin with, just make sure you kind of form those bonds, because it makes it easy to iron out difficulties in the beginning.
Very important. Yeah, I lived in a building when I first moved here, and my bank manager was Spanish, and I didn't realise he was my bank manager until one day I went into a bank and said hello to him, and he was living in my building and became quite friendly and went to a housewarming party of his. And I just made a will at the time with a Spanish solicitor through an English speaking broker, and I paid €400 for a will and all the paperwork that goes along with it. And I ended up meeting a friend of the bank manager's a few years later at another party. And I said, I want to do a new will. I went into him, did the will, all in Spanish, speaking Spanish to him, and it cost me €48. So big difference. You do make some good contacts.
Yeah. So that was Leanne Maguire O'Neill and David Smith. Thank you for your comments on that one. The next biggest one that I've got down here is try before you buy. if you're going to buy a house, rent first. Does that sound good to you?
My people always say to me, what do you think? And I always say definitely rent first for at least 3 months. And the reason is this: I had money to buy when I first moved there. And my bank manager said to me two things. He said, first of all, you don't know what the area is like, and if you buy there. He said, and secondly, he said, if you buy a property, um, always get a mortgage on it. And I said, well, I want to pay out what? He said, no. He said, because the banks do more checks on the property if you have a mortgage on it.
Aha,
And he
good
said,
tip.
because we've got an investment in it. It's our investment. If you're paying cash for it, he said, we don't care. We get the property. So he said, get a mortgage. That's the number one tip. The second is I rented a place near where I wanted to live for 3 months originally, and then the it was in the winter time, and as the summer was coming on, we found that the kitchens of the hotel that were behind us started to open up at 6 o'clock in the mornings, and there was banging and crashing of plates and cars pulling up and delivery trucks, and the noise was horrendous. And we had this for the whole of the summer. So we realised that this wasn't really the place for us. And also there was a school nearby where at 2 o'clock here, all the mums come and collect the kids at 2 o'clock from the school. So all the mums double park their cars outside and on the pavement and stuff, and it's pretty chaotic for about half an hour. And I said, no, we don't want to live here. And I ended up buying about another 10 minutes further down the road. And I wouldn't have known any of this if I had bought the place until it was too late. So definitely
Mm.
rent first, even, just for a few months.
And just in advance of renting as well, people have said, take your time, visit often, out of season as well. If you've got the time to do all of that, so make sure it's where you want to live.
Yeah,
And
because people come to Spain in the summer for the weather, and obviously they love it in the summer. I would always say come in the summer, but if you're thinking of buying here, come in the winter months. Come and have a
mm,
look at the place, the area you're coming to in the winter. Some places here in Spain completely shut down in the winter. The bars and that have a couple of months off, and it's a ghost town. And the weather can be quite cold and windy and rainy in some parts of Spain in the winter. So definitely come and check it out in the winter as well.
yeah, that's even down in the south where you are. You were saying about Granada, because it's near the mountains. It gets snow and wind for 2 or 3 months, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right on the beach, literally 5 minutes from the beach here in Almeria, near Almeria main airport. But my wife's sister lives in Granada. It's about an hour and a half away, more or less. And we drive from here in the summer sometimes in shorts and a t-shirt. Time we get up there, it might be cold and chilly in the mountains, So an hour inland, a big difference in the climate change. Maybe not as far as that even sometimes if you're living in the hills.
Yeah, and it's especially true of people who've been on holiday and they've wanted to go up in the mountains and they've been walking and they think, yeah, I want to live out in the wild. It's the dream, isn't it, to live in complete isolation? But uh, when you've got to live through a winter there, and a lot of Spanish homes aren't built for the winter. They're built to keep out the heat in the summer, and so you need to use a lot of extra heat, and people just don't expect it. So yeah, that
Definitely,
was
definitely.
one of my experiences of moving to Ireland. We're not in the same place that we first moved into in Ireland. We're still renting, but when we first moved, we were about 5 or 6 miles down the road, and it was a lovely place to live, but it turned out to be not perfect because people wouldn't travel to my wife's business there, whereas they'd travel to here because it's 10 minutes closer to the local town, and
Yeah.
so it just made sense. So you just don't know until sometimes you've been here for a couple of years.
I originally wanted to buy in land, as you say. I wanted my own little place, typical Spanish house with garden, with olive trees and stuff like that. And I did find a place which was 2 hours inland from Almeria, and I fell in love with it. And it was cheap at the time. It was 70,000 euros for a big plot of land. It had 200 orange trees on it. Brilliant. But at the time, my Spanish wasn't very good, nor was my wife's. I was married before, so my first wife didn't speak Spanish, and I was working away. So to travel an hour and a half each day to work. It would be like living back in the UK. It would be, and I didn't want to do that travelling. And also, it was a long way away from the shops and utilities. So it sounds great on paper, and also a lot of English people retire here. And the older generation, it's okay when you first move here, but when you get older and you might not want to drive, or you might have to give up your driving and that, if you're not perfect in Spanish, it can be really cut off away from people. Whereas if you're living more in a populated area, like Malaga or Alicante and places like that, you have got help there if you need it, and it's easier to get access to shops and stuff like that. So it's something you really need to think about. It might sound good, but it's not always a great idea moving away unless you're pretty good at Spanish, and probably for the
Yeah.
younger families, I would say.
I'll just add to that a little bit and do all the shout outs. So also Jupan Adri Bernard, which is one of the best names on here. Check out the first and last hours of sunshine are on your house, because if you're in the mountains or in a valley, you may have very limited sunshine and it sounds all right in the summer when you need the shade, but in the winter it's just going to stay cold. Also, Sally Pert says check out what your neighbours are like before you buy. And Brian and Linda Calder, Kath Sale, Rachel Slade, they were saying rent before you buy, get a feel of the area. Debbie Wilkins and Shirley Curry were saying don't sell your UK property straight away. Give it a few years so you have the chance to return if you choose differently. You may not like it. I don't know why they might not like it in Spain, but that's my personal opinion. But yeah, some people change their mind, don't they? So that's everybody's name. Let's move on to a different one now. Another top tip from you, David.
A top tip, I would say, about buying property here, really, when people come to buy and you realise you've seen a place and you want to buy it, there's something you should do. And okay, people will normally employ a solicitor to do the checks, or the bank do the checks and stuff like that. And this is what I've done as well. But I've bought and sold several properties here now, and bought land and built my own house. And I didn't learn this until a few years ago, and that is that you can go to the council offices and ask to speak to the planning officer, the planning registry officer. In any main town, they have one. And you say that you're thinking about buying a property, whether it's an apartment, a house, whatever it is you're going to buy, and you can have a plot number. You get a plot number from your estate agent, or it's on the escritura of the property. You go to the planning and registry officer and you say, look, we're thinking about buying this property. It's a 3-bedroom house. It's got a garage, blah, blah, blah. And you can look it up. And they've got like what I call a doomsday book. It's this big old dusty book. And he looked through the book. He can tell you where the property is, what permissions it's got, is it legal, is it registered and everything. And this is all completely free. You have the right to do this. But if you don't speak very good Spanish, I would suggest paying someone to go with you and do some checks on this, because a few years ago I was looking at buying a property here, an old house, but I wanted the land that it was on. I was going to knock the house down. And I went to the planning and registry officer, asked him about this property, which was a 3-bedroom house with a garage and a couple of outbuildings. He looked it up on his book and he said, no, it's only a 2-bedroom house. And I said, no, it's 3-bedroom. Well, he said, they haven't got permission for that. It's not in the book. They haven't got permission for it. So it's illegal. It's an illegal build. So I went back to the estate agent, told them this, and they said, oh, that's not a problem. When we go to the notary, we can get that all put in, and it's not a problem. Everything's okay. Do you want to put a deposit down? I went back to my solicitor and told him about this, and he said, it's a problem. He said, they don't automatically give you the right once you've done that. They could even ask the owner to take it all down. And I said, well, look, I'm going to knock the house down anyway. I don't care. He said, it doesn't matter. If it's not got the registered paperwork to have that done in the first place, it's an illegal build. He might not be able to get permission for that, So we just walked away in the end. So yeah, go to the town hall, ask to speak to the planning registry officer, and you can, even if it's an apartment, they can tell you everything about it. Another property I was going to buy here had it was a square-looking piece of land, nothing on there at all. Looked brilliant. Went to the planning registry officer. On his plan, it had the corner of the property cut off, a line drawn through it. And I said, what's that? And he said, oh, that's an underground pipe that runs across the property that the council have got. It's 3 metres underground. So I said, does that affect me? And he said, well, you can never build on that corner of the property. It's yours, but you can't build on that. And I said, why? He said, because they might need access to dig it up. So, it's things like that you wouldn't, and the estate agents don't tell you, they just want the commission. Normally they're not worried about that. And some solicitors might not even pick it up. So go to the planning registry officer and double check. It's free to do
Mhm.
and it's well worth,
Brilliant.
investigating it.
That's very good advice there. In fact, Josie Gibbs says very good advice about planning. She's on the chat. Josie, click on the like button, and everybody else, click on the like button if you like the advice that you're getting today. Um, and what was I going to say? Somebody else was saying, yes, the deposit. You mentioned paying the deposit. A lot of people were saying on the Facebook groups, pay your deposit through your solicitor rather than direct to the agent, because a lot of people have lost their deposit when agents have just gone and sold the property to somebody else from under them.
Yeah, this is all changed in the last few years now, so it's a lot more strict now. Normally here, if you put if you say you like a house and say it's 100,000, normally they ask you to put down, it's a percentage. I can't remember offhand what it is, but on the plot of land that we were buying here, they wanted us to put down €6,000 deposit. And the way it goes is, once you say you're going to have the property, in our case, and the last property I bought was this plot of land, we said we're going to have it. So you have to put €2,000 deposit with the estate agent, and they keep that in a holding fund, which is all refundable. If the owner says yes, then you put down a little bit more. And in our case, it was 6,000. So we put down 6,000 in total. Now this is a non-refundable deposit. So once you get to this stage, you're committed. And if the owner backs out and says, no, I don't want to sell it to you now, he has to pay you double the deposit. So he has to give you back, in our case, €12,000. If we pull out, we lose the 6,000. Now, this is, if people are very serious and you really want the property, then you put down a bigger deposit. So say you put down 20,000. It's very unlikely that the owner is going to back out, because he's going to have to pay you double the deposit back. So now putting deposits with estate agents is much stricter. It's much more. There's much more paperwork involved, and they're all very heavily looked into by the commissions and stuff like that. So it's a lot safer. Years ago, yeah, you could put a deposit down with an estate agent and you've lost it. But I would say now it's a lot different. In the last few years, they're all regulated and they're very strict rules. But definitely get a solicitor. The last three places I've bought, because my wife is Spanish and she works for the local government here, and my Spanish is pretty good, we haven't bothered to go through a solicitor. We've done all the checks ourselves through, as I say, the planning offices and stuff like that. And I've got a good friend that's an architect and a builder here, so I use him for advice. And we've done our own searches. Basically, we know the system. We do our own searches. But if you're new here, definitely get a solicitor. But don't worry about deposits now. They are very very well covered. You got a
That
lot of
sounds great.
comeback.
Yeah, no gazumping anymore. Well, if they do gazump, then they've got to pay for it. So that's great.
Yeah, I hear these stories mostly in the north of Spain. It's a little bit different up there now. They have different rules and regulations up there, but in the south of Spain, it's much stricter now. There's much more rules and regulations you have to follow. So,
So yeah,
yeah,
it's
things are
worth
changing here.
it is worth, like you say, knowing what the rules are in different autonomous regions, because they do have different rules, don't they?
Yeah, things vary here a lot. And when people say to me about different things they need and paperwork, and I give my advice, which I get from a very good source here. I've got one of the best sources here, as I've got a very good friend. It's the British consulate here in Almeria. And when I tell him what people tell me, he said, that's not true. He said, where'd they get that from? And I said, well, they told me they went to the offices and he said, no, technically, they're not allowed to do that. But if you don't speak Spanish and you don't know, these people, it just depends who you get on the day, basically. People tell you different things. So you have to be careful. You have to know the rules, or you can be taken advantage here, as any country where you don't speak the language, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Ask your friend the consul whether they want to come on the show.
Yeah, well, I'm sure he would. Yeah, he's. It's funny. It was my accountant when I first moved here. He did my residency and my NIE number, my self-employed, and my books. And we've been in touch for all the time I've been here. But I I'm not self-employed anymore. I'm retired early to build my house and everything. And I do videos with him for information purposes for my groups and my blogs and stuff like that. And in exchange for the information that he gives me, I publicise his company because he's got a company that helps British people get in their paperwork and things like that.
Mhm.
So I get my information from pretty good source. When I see people say, "Well, you have to have this," only yesterday somebody said to me, "Well, you need 30,000 for the first year when you move to Spain and 50,000 the second year," and then they check that. No, that's not true. And
Mhm.
I just sent a text message to Alejandro, and I said, look, people say, where did they get that from? He said, that's not true. They don't check the second year. It's not the second year yet, so they can't check. He said, but that's not on the cards. And they're not going to go around and check everybody's bank account after they've got the residency to see if they still got 30,000 in the bank or they spend it. So there's lots of things. There's lots of experts on Facebook, as I always say.
Yes. They're just adding to the points you said about Spanish lawyers. Paul Johnson, Jenny Spain, and Mike Murphy. Hello to you. They were saying don't compare Spanish lawyers and estate agents to UK ones. There are different rules. So find out the rules and laws in advance. Some of the processes are different, and they're just saying accept them because this is a different country. Get the legal processes started straight away.
Yeah, yeah. Also, I mean, in the UK, you have a lawyer, or a solicitor to do your house conveyancing and stuff. But here in Spain, there are specified lawyers to do work with judges. You can have notaries. You can have a notary's assistant. You can have a estate agent, or you can go to an assessoria. There's so many different types of lawyers, if you like, that can do house conveyancing work for you, and they're not all the same. So I would say definitely go to somebody that's recommended one that's had experience at least once, and what's the feedback like, because they're all very different. And not all estate agents are the same, I know, but most of them are all out for the commission they can get. And, it's a business. And if you don't do your own checks and you're not careful, you can get taken for a ride. But they are regulated now, and so most of them have changed a lot in the last few years. But there's a thing now called, they call it a REF, a net, where they're in groups of estate agents. So if you see a property for sale, they share it with other estate agents, like a common group, I suppose, and they share the commission. So sometimes if you've seen a property, it might be shared with two or three different agents. So you want to also ask your estate agent, is that solely with them or are they sharing it? Because sometimes you can haggle with the commissions with them. Again, the commissions are pretty high here. It's around €6,000 commission to the estate agent for even a small property. My plot of land here, we had to pay the estate agent €6,000 commission for
Mhm.
finding a plot of land. Even though we found it by driving around anyway, we had to buy it through him, and he got
Mhm.
€6,000 for that. I mean, that's nice money, seeing
Yeah.
as we found the plot of land anyway. But there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, we've got some nice, funny comments here. The Tina Quilter and Sandra Evely, I think that's the pronunciation, are saying very similar things. Don't leave your brains on the plane. Bring your sensible brain, not your holiday one. That's
Yeah,
good
yeah.
comments.
Well, actually, I've got an aunt. My auntie lives in the north of Spain, and she's been here about 25 years, but she's moved back to the UK now because she bought a property, came here years ago, bought a property, built on it, all illegal, no permissions or anything, didn't have a proper escritura, didn't do the proper checks, thought the Brexit wouldn't happen, and now she can't live in the property, she hasn't got the right paperwork, and she's had to move back to the UK. But basically, if you did something like that in the UK, people would look at you as if you're stupid. But people tend to do that here a lot, and I hear a lot of these stories, and it's because people haven't followed the rules, they haven't done their homework, and they haven't done it the right way round. So, I don't really have much sympathy for these people. There's rules and regulations, same as there are in the UK. So if you decide not to take any notice of that, then we're going to pay the consequences, you know.
Exactly. Good advice. And we've got a really good name here for this next piece of advice. Somebody called Bosaw Laplander. Is that a real name? I hope it is. They're saying, accept that the slower pace of life that attracted you means that things you want done quickly may happen slowly.
Don't get me started. The Spanish bureaucracy. Probably the second biggest tip I should have given is be patient and then be very patient. To give you an example, building here is a nightmare anyway, but the Spanish paperwork here takes weeks and weeks for the simplest of things that doesn't need to take time, just take time. Now, we had some electric cables connected to the street here, and we had to get permission for this from the local council. And so we phoned up the council and they said, yeah, you have to come in and make an appointment. So we said, okay, when can we come in? They said, no, you have to make an appointment to come and make an appointment. The appointment has to be made in person in the council offices. But you can't just come in and do that. You have to make an appointment on the phone. And I said to my Spanish wife, that's crazy. If we can make an appointment on the phone, why can't we make an appointment? This is for an inspector to come out and look at the house. So we made an appointment, and the appointment was for 2 weeks later to go in to make an appointment for an inspector to come and have a look at the work that we needed to be done. And it took almost 5 weeks for an inspector to come, and then he wrote a report, which took another week before we could have a cable connected. And the bloke came and connected the cable in 15 minutes. So, 6 weeks to do a 15-minute job, and you pull your hair out here sometimes, you really do. But that's the Spanish system, and you just have to get used to it. There's no way around it.
I got told off on the Facebook groups by a Spanish person for using the expression mañana, and I don't think we were making fun of it, and I think we were actually very, very complimentary, because it's the idea that it's a relaxed and lovely pace of life, and life is more important than work. And we were both using it as a compliment, but they were calling me a racist because of it, which was interesting. But I think it was actually a troll. So I don't know. I didn't get a response when I said sorry. I'm prepared to be educated about this. But anyway, it's an interesting point. But it is, to me, mañana means this is what you kind of expect when you go to Spain. It's a hot country and it's a lovely, lovely place to live. And you don't expect things to move fast in a hot country.
No, my Spanish wife now, she works for the Junta de Andalucía, the Spanish local government here, and they finish at 2 o'clock, and that's it. So you can't get anything done after 2 o'clock. They just go home. That's it. They're finished. But she doesn't mind telling you that there's some people, I call them dinosaurs, some older members of staff that sit there and stamp pieces of paper, and they stamp 5 or 6 pieces of paper, and that's it. They've done their job. They're not doing any more, and it doesn't matter. You can't push them to do it. And with these government jobs here in Spain, they're for life, so it's very difficult to get rid of these people, and they're old school. They have a system. Yeah. And I'll just tell you a quick story. When you get married here to for a Spanish person like I did, you have to have what they call a family book, and it's like it's an official book where it stamps in there who you are, how many children you got, stuff like that. They call it the family book. So when I was married, I had to get my name put in this book, which you have in your house. So my wife had this book. It's like a passport, really. And she said, they've made a mistake with some of the details in there. You need to take it back to the council offices. I've made an appointment. Just take it in and ask them to correct it. So I took this book back and I went into the council offices and made the appointment and everything, sat in the waiting room 20 minutes, and then finally went in, and there's this old gentleman sitting behind this desk with the 2 Spanish flags behind him, and said, in Spanish, you've made a mistake. He didn't like that at all. I haven't made a mistake, he said. And I said, well, the dates are wrong and this is wrong. Can you change it? And so he got out from behind him, which I thought was a decorative item, an old typewriter. And he pulled this typewriter out and he started to write on the typewriter, click, 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 with 2 fingers. And I thought it was a joke. I really thought he was joking. You know, you're not going to do this on a computer. And he got some Tipex stuff and crossed out the mistake and typed over it with a typewriter and put this in our book. When I showed it to my wife, she was horrified, and I said, "This is not a joke. This is what happened," you know. And it's just sometimes it surprises me how backdated the systems here in Spain. And there are some very fast systems and some good systems, but you know, sometimes it's unbelievable how they manage things here.
Yes. I think we'll make it clear there are some very hard-working people in Spain, and the systems are getting better and better. So just in case I get a complaint because of that.
I must say that Spanish people are not lazy by a long means, and they work long hours, much longer than the UK, in for much less money. That's a big opener when you come to Spain. The wages are a lot less, but you need less money here, so there's compensation. But I mean, the Spanish people here, they work. Okay, they have a siesta. I never do, but my wife always has a siesta after lunch, about 3 o'clock for an hour. But most people go back to work till 7 or 8 o'clock at night, or even later. You know, I've got a friend here, a Spanish friend that works in a shopping centre here. He's a maintenance guy. He works till 10 o'clock at night, and sometimes they start at half 7 in the morning. So they work long hours, a lot longer than UK. And remember, if it's in July or August, you can be working in terrific temperatures here. So they're not lazy by a long shot.
Excellent. Now I'm just going to zip through some because it's we've been on for nearly 40 minutes now, so we'll kind of shorten it. I think I'm going to zip through these names and bits of advice on here very quickly. So somebody saying don't bring your right-hand drive car unless it's kind of rare and old and precious to you. It's easy to buy a Spanish left-hand drive, and you can avoid import charges and taxes. Somebody said, Glynis Clancy said, buy a resale property, not a new one on an unfinished urbanisation. Lots of reasons and details she put for that, but that's a quick piece of advice. Miri May says, sort out your medical care. And Jackie Ambrose says, get a reputable removal company, because especially now there's more paperwork after Brexit, and that will avoid unnecessary costs. Sheila Osborne says, get a good translator. We've already said that. Make relationships. Jenny Potter says, bring your winter clothes. I don't know if she was serious, but yeah, it can be serious.
Depends where you live, yeah. But the car one, that's another big one here. I would say don't bring a British car. I understand why people want to bring their British car over, but I've seen so many people have trouble with the paperwork, the taxes, changing the headlights over. And if you do everything fine and everything okay, and it doesn't cost you a lot of money, you're still sitting on the wrong side of the car. So when you go to the car park or barriers, you know, or overtaking a lorry, it's difficult. And then you can't sell that car. People don't want to buy it. You know, if you're going to live in Spain any length of time, just buy a Spanish car.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go to London and look for a Spanish car. You know, you buy an English car. So don't do it in Spain. This is a personal thing, but I would say definitely not. And people say, well, the Spanish cars are expensive. They're no different than the UK. You know, it's all relative. And even the banks now are doing deals on cars. You can buy cars from your banks, and they do what they call leasing and renting here for 4 years, where from €75 a month, you can get a car from the bank, and every 4 years they take it back and you buy another car. So the car is technically never yours, but you know, you get all the insurance, your tax and MOT all included in that. And I was offered a van last year from my bank for €150 a month. And I was very tempted to do it because although it's not yours, every 4 years you just send it back and get another one. So it's always a decent vehicle. But buying second-hand cars here now, even from a personal, a private seller, you have a 6 months guarantee by law in the last few years now. So you've got a 6 month guarantee on that. Even if it's from Joe Bloggs down the road, he has to give you a guarantee on it. But, you know, it's like any second-hand car in any country, you're taking a chance. So you need to take somebody that knows about cars with you. But buy a Spanish car, it's much easier in the long run, and you do get used to it. I love it. And when I went back to the UK, I found it a bit awkward driving a British car in the UK, you know. So it's just what you get used to. So definitely buy a Spanish car, I would say.
I think I'm going to get one through the bank. That's 75 Normally a car.
Starting from that. This is with Bankia. I'm with Bankia. I've got a couple of different bank accounts, but a lot of the banks are doing it now. And I saw on television last night, actually, one of the banks is doing a hybrid car now. It's half electric and half petrol, and they're
Brilliant.
starting from €185 a month. It's quite a basic car. Obviously, there's extras and extras, but the banks are doing deals on cars now, so
Which banks?
you can do that.
Which banks are doing them? Do you know?
Um, I know Santander do it, Bankia for sure, because I was offered through Bankia. Some of the other banks are doing it as well, but ask, I think they call it renting here, but it doesn't mean renting like we think of renting. It's a bit like a lease thing. You pay a deposit, and in my particular instance, it was €1,000 down, and then I was going to pay, I think it was 120 a month or something like that for the van. And that includes the tax, the insurance, the ITV, just about everything. And if there's a problem, you phone them up and they bring you a courtesy car straight away. There's no messing about. So it's worry-free motoring. And I said to my wife, we've got a couple of cars at the moment. One of them's getting on a bit now. I said, well, when we change, we're going to do that. We're going to go through the bank and get a hybrid car. I want to get half and half, try and be green as we can here. And if there's any problems with it, just call the bank up and they sort it out. So, every
That's
4
brilliant.
years you've got worry-free motoring. That's the way I'm looking at it anyway. But
That's
I
brilliant.
do
My
understand
mechanic,
why people bring their English car here, but, to me, it doesn't make sense.
no, my mechanic over here was saying when you're driving an old car, it's going to cost you between 2 and 3 thousand euros a year in maintenance alone. And the tax on cars over here is ridiculous. It's like 5, 6, 7, 800 euros a year for tax. So if we could save anywhere near that, I mean that's just it's worth having 200 a month for a good car for us over there if it's worry free, no maintenance, MOT paid for. That sounds brilliant.
Yeah, well, road tax is a lot cheaper. My car road tax was €48 for the year, the car road tax, and 58 for the other car. My motorbike road tax for my motorbike was €9 a year,
Wow,
€9. So very different.
brilliant.
But the other thing is, where we're buying a car, go to a main dealer, wherever the car you want to buy, go to the main dealer and ask if they've got X demonstration cars, because a lot of these garages have got these X demo cars. Now, I wanted to buy a Seat Ibiza when I moved here a few years back, and I wanted to buy the brand new one. And in the showroom, they had a car which was the same. And I said to the guy, "Is that like what I'm buying, that one?" And he said, "Yeah, it's exactly the same." So I said, "Well, you said I've got to wait 2 weeks. Why can't I have that one?" And he said, "Well, that's an X demonstration." And I said, "Well, what's the difference?" And he said, "Well, that's a year old and it's got 3,000 kilometres on the clock. But it was €2,500 cheaper. And it had all the paperwork and the guarantees and everything. So in the end, I changed and I bought that one, because most new cars, they lose value when you walk off the forecourt anyway. So
Mm.
ask for an X demonstration car. There's lots of them around and they're pretty good.
Good advice. Yeah, good advice. So, I tell you what. I was just going to say, you talking about your website before. Plug your website. Tell everybody the address of that.
Yeah, well, I've got two books out on Amazon and Kindle. If you've got some devices on Kindle, you can download them for free. But they're both one's about working in Spain and one's about living in Spain. There are loads of tips and advice there. And that's in livinginspainbooks.com. Livinginspainbooks.com on Amazon and Kindle. And also, I've got a blog, which is British Expats in Spain. There's a blog and a Facebook group as well, British Expats in Spain, where we have loads of tips and advice. And we have a mentor group as well, where we help personally mentor people with their personal needs and questions that they might have. So to try and help others make their move to Spain a bit less stressful.
Brilliant. That's very good. And so the last few names, I think I'll read these out so people don't feel left out. There's people saying join all related Facebook groups to begin with for help and also for social life, as well as getting to know the locals in person. That's obviously very important. That was from Yesenia Guerra, somebody with war as a last name. I wonder if she's one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I presume it's a female name. Is that Yesenia? Anyway, and Heather Cherry as well said that. Sheila Wilson said, make sure both adults are committed to the move. If you're a couple, some moves end up as a nightmare for one party. You should both be on board. And finally, Tiffany Libby. Hello, Tiffany. I've spoken to you a lot on the group there. She says, put on your patience pants and have a sense of humour. And that's the last piece of advice. You have any more pieces of advice before we say goodbye for today?
I would say research. Do lots of research. There's loads of places you can research online. Join the groups, the Facebook groups, read everything, listen to others. But everybody, like myself, is quite specific on what tips and advice they give you. Do your own research. Research the area, definitely rent, and at least go to that area 2 or 3 times, different types of the year, before you commit yourself to anything, and rent first is probably the best one. And if you're really serious about moving to Spain, whether it's now or in the future, start learning Spanish now. That will make things much easier for you in the long run. So, download the apps. There's loads of free apps on your phone. The kiddies apps are brilliant. I like when I was learning the children's ones. They're easy to follow. The games, play the games on your phone. When you get bored of them, delete them and download some more. But just eat, sleep and breathe Spanish all the time. Put the TV, the films, change the film subtitles to Spanish, Get it in your brain all the time. That's the way to do it.
It's true. Liz has been watching Star Trek in Spanish. It's really funny.
John Wayne is quite funny. If you watch John Wayne in Spanish, the voices they use for John Wayne here, sometimes it just makes me laugh so much. It's just not that same with a squeaky little voice the Spanish seems to give him. But there you go.
Yeah. And there's 2 ways of doing it. Of course, you can watch, like you said, you can watch the dubbed version where you're listening to Spanish, or you can watch it in English and have the subtitles in Spanish. So, and of course, it's a different area of your brain, especially if you're going to need to be writing Spanish, then that's really handy as well.
Yeah, and with the internet now, you can have radio on. You can have Spanish radio on your mobile phone. Like here, it's funny. At the moment, I'm listening to a radio station that's in a London-based radio station on my phone because I like hearing the news and what's going on in the UK. But you can do the same thing in the UK. Put a Spanish station on that's related to the area you want to move. Everyone's got them. All these local areas have got their own radio station. Have that on and listen to that in your headphones when you're at the gym or when you're driving. So you're just taking it in. You might even learn something about the area you're moving to.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I think we've covered that topic now. I think very, very well. You've actually got loads of advice on building regulations, but we've not got time for that. Maybe that's something you can put up on your blog, and I'm going to be coming on your podcast at some point, talking about the Irish rules and Irish passports and things like that. So I'm going to have to do a bit more research now because I'm waiting for mine. And so I'm going to. I had it written down. I'm going to let you go and enjoy the Almeria sunshine, but it's a bit cloudy today, isn't it? That picture's not accurate behind you.
Yeah, the picture behind me was taken from my local beach a few years ago, actually, just down the road from here. And it is normally like that, but at the moment we've got this cloudy today, and they forecast a bit of drizzle this afternoon. But after that, next week is looking good for the rest of the week. But it's slow in coming this summer here at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been an unusual time. Anyway, so it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for giving up all of your time, and I will see you on the podcast at some point.
Sure. Thanks very much for having me on the show. All the best.
Brilliant. I've just got to switch my screen round, otherwise we'll end up with just you on the screen. Thanks very much, David. Everybody say goodbye to David. Bye for now. So, fantastic. Next week then, on U2 Spain, we're back with Chris from Upsticks, and we'll be talking about what to do if one of you is an EU passport holder and the other one is not. Can you both move to Spain together, or does one of you need a visa? Find out next Saturday at the usual time of 9:30 a.m. GMT plus 1. That's UK and Irish time, or 10:30 if you're in Spain, or sometime a lot before that if you're in the States. Don't forget to check out the Liz and Skatz channel. We broadcast live every Wednesday evening about health and weight loss. We've lost over 110 pounds in weight between us. And also Liz's channel, U2 Yoga, and you can get free yoga and meditation classes on that. There's also U2 Aromatherapy, which Liz is broadcasting live on, as well as having videos on there pre-recorded. And we have t-shirts for all of those channels. We get the U2 Spain and etc. All of those links can be found in the video's description below. Thank you for watching. That is all for this week. Please click on the like button if you haven't already, and also subscribe. Click on the bell, ting, and I will see you soon. And peace and love to everybody. You've been lovely. Bye for now.